happy, but they don't know what to do.
Most of them don't have computers.
Yeah.
I just have I have a question, I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. What is the regulation? I know the properties that abut these properties have a 50-foot buffer. What is the regulation when they make a deal with a neighboring person or somebody that's going to purchase a property to dig up that buffer? Is there a regulation on that, or can they just, sign a document and go forward with taking that buffer away? What is the regulation on that? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Mr. Rice?
Yeah, if the landowner that abuts that 50-foot buffer signs off and gives the authority to the excavator to go up to his property line, so be it, other than creating an angle. He can't just have a drop off, but it's between the landowner and whomever's mining that operation.
All right, thank you. I know even our town did that years ago. I think-
Another thing, on that current plan that revised plan they put through, they don't have the 100-foot buffer was marked off for inland wetlands for a strategic wetland area on that map. So looks like in one corner they're a lot closer. They have to mark it from the flag, and there's no demarcations on the whole southern area about that upland waterway. And that's in my packet too, is one of the things that there's a failure there. And my other question is, yeah, if you have a regulation that says you have to stay 8 feet above groundwater, why are you gonna take that dirt out and refill it?
It's natural filtration.
Gravel.
Wait, I know,
Big problem.
I need to,
Gravel, yes.
so then we're gonna get a lesser product over our water table.
Toxic sludge.
Now, help me out here, I need to understand this. You're an engineer, Mr. Santos is my understanding. Mr. Held is an engineer. Help us out. We don't have all the money to hire experts. We're trying, and like Ed's spoken and said before, we do have skills. We are smart. But help us out, because you're here for all these people in this room. You're here, every single person. You are, because then someday, you may be us.
Yes.
And how is that gonna be all of a sudden if something doesn't quite jive? So explain that to me. Explain, when you have a rule that says 8 feet above the groundwater, that's it, it's a shall, which is shall, the word shall is mandatory and not discretionary. And nowhere does it say you can play in that 8-foot separation. Nowhere does it say in your zoning regulations you can play in that area. But, what's going on here? Because on their plan, they're playing under 3 items listed on that plan. And so why would they go through the effort to pull that off, bring stuff back, and we don't even know what the quality that they're bringing back over our water tables? I don't get it. Could you answer?
I don't speak for the applicant.
Well, could we call the applicant in?
Mr. Held,
What's the specific question you'd like me to address?
why are you excavating these 10-foot space?
Why are you proposing that?
Obviously, the why we're proposing it is to take out more marketable material. We believe it is in accordance with our regulations to do that.
Please repeat that.
Please repeat it.
We can't hear back here.
The why we are doing it is to maximize the amount of material that's marketable that will come off the site before the restoration.
Wow,
Great.
bam.
Of course it's for profit, they were a for-profit
Let's go back to
organization.
the regulation.
Let's go back to the regulations.
Yeah.
Order, please.
So if I can address the conformance with the regulations piece of it, I think everybody that's sitting on the commission right now remembers that 6 months ago or so, you approved raw materials to excavate a pond. Obviously, a pond does not have 8 feet of cover over the water table. So clearly,
We missed that
Those
meeting.
two sections of the regulation,
It must have been put not on
Order,
the
please,
agenda,
ma'am,
like you always do.
Ma'am.
No, let's hear this.
Yeah,
Let's hear
it's
this.
true.
I need to understand.
Not on the
this.
agenda.
I need to understand. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
the commission approved the excavation of, I think it was like a 6-acre pond.
Okay, that's a great
It was proposed to be about 20 feet deep. Nobody was not under the assumption that there's not gonna be a pond there. Everybody knew there was a pond. My point being that those two sections of the regulation are not in conflict with each other.
Yes. I differ. I beg to differ
Well, ultimately,
because
it's the commission's job to interpret their regulations. It's not mine and it's
but-
nobody else's.
I understand that, but you need to hear this because the commission, you're the last line. And I can understand Mr. Held because he said, we created a pond. That was a very specific event. They wanted a pond, so yes, you have to go down to the ground, you have to go down below the groundwater, you have to get a water source. And the water fills in, so you have to go to that level. However, this is an entirely different situation. We are not creating a pond here. We are protecting the water table. And the regulation, again, states, you cannot go below, bottom excavation cannot go below 8 feet of the water table. And if you vote for this permit and allow all those over excavation clauses to remain, and all of what they're proposing to take away more gravel and bring back what? We don't even know, but it's not gonna be the same quality. We even have a lesser situation over our water table, then you're creating new zoning regulations.
Chairman, would you like
Jennifer
to do
Burlingame.
the quality of the
Yes, and I'm gonna recognize this, and then,
It doesn't matter.
Is it correct that, our CEO, is this Cynthia Dunn right here?
Yes,
You work 15 hours a week?
yes. Well,
Which is-
next July 1st, I'll be working 18. I have worked, I was given 15 hours a week, 4 extra hours a week if I need it, and accumulate it. So I had to use all the hours by July 1st, and so I've been working more than 15 hours. But after July 1st, it would only be 18 hours a week.
All these projects we keep putting on our plate, she needs 40, 50 hours a week to get her job done. We should, I'm just saying, right now, if you do that, this woman's inundated. How can she do her job appropriately? We will, we're just getting started.
sorry.
Yeah, Gary Kettle again. I don't know, there's a lot of discussion about the quality of materials being brought in, but if you go over the Mass Line into Dudley, Ramco is having truck after truck after truck of material brought in from all over the state of Massachusetts. How do we know the same thing's not gonna happen, they're gonna bring that material in for the 25,000 yards?
Mr. Held is gonna address the material. Mr. Held, silence, please.
So the material that's gonna be brought back in to bring the site up to a subgrade before the subsoil and topsoil is put back on is the silt that's actually washed out of the material that's taken off the site. So it's essentially the same material that's taken from the site is going back.
With
No, it isn't.
no filtering agents left in it. You're taking all the aggregate out.
Uh,
You're putting back everything that cost you money.
I would beg to differ with the filtering capacity of it. Coarse gravel has very little filtering ability. The silt that will be put back is what provides the filtering capacity in the soil. If you, let me give you an example. The way the public health code is written, if you have a percolation rate that's too fast, you have to stay further above groundwater table. Or you have to prove that you've got a much deeper depth of receiving soil before you hit a water table or ledge. The reason being, that coarse material that percolates water very quickly has very limited filtering capacity. It's the silt content that gives you the filtering capacity.
Can I ask one question
Mr. Keller.
regarding that? So is the silt, what's the definition of clay?
That's the same thing.
Clay is not the same thing as silt. Clay is basically a particle that's so small, it has an electrostatic attraction in water. It's basically a colloidal solid. So if you take clay and it's mixed in with water and you shake it up and you mix it up really good, and you let it sit on a table for a day and come back and look at the jar, it's still gonna look all cloudy because the clay particles are so small, they're not gonna settle out. If you waited months and months, depending on the size of the particles they may. Clay is basically impermeable. There's not gonna be clay put back on the site, it's silt. Yeah.
I have a question on that. So I'm gonna go back to the last meeting minutes, when we have this kind of technical response from the applicant and or the representative. Our Black Mirror said, we have held. What do we have to, as a town? I'm kind of finding the minutes very confusing because Mr. Held seems to hold different positions. So when we have Mr. Held, how is that, I don't understand that comment. When the citizens were asking for an engineer, because we don't have an engineer to have conversation with him to this level. He's got the whole floor here, and how come we don't have an opportunity as the town to have rebuttal and or the conversation on that level because we have Mr. Held as the town? I don't get it.
So, I mean, Mr. Held is the engineer for the applicant.
Correct.
And his entire professional reputation is on the line with everything he said.
Right, but the response is that
So-
we have Mr. Held. When the citizens asked for an engineer, the response was, we have Mr. Held. I don't get that. It's in the minutes.
I'm sorry, the applicant has to, I mean,
So does it
No, I'm
sound-
asking, no, the question that I'm asking is, what is the definition of that comment? We have Mr. Held as the people, for the citizens.
I didn't say for the citizens, I was saying that he was a professional.
No, you said we have Mr. Held,
can you let,
W-E.
ma'am, can you let him speak?
We have Mr. Held.
He spoke as a professional, and in my background, and went to UConn, took agronomy, I understand what he was saying, and I believe that. You start talking about silt, sand, clay, we studied that in school. I don't know whether you did, but at least
No,
I
the
had an
citizens were
opportunity.
asking. The citizens were asking for an engineer, and your response.
He was an engineer.
No, the citizens were asking for an engineer.
Well, why didn't you hire one?
Order,
No, no.
order.
We're the taxes.
No.
So, okay, there's an engineer in this application, that's,
Okay.
thank you.
That's
Mr. I mean, I wanna make sure everyone's heard, I do wanna make sure that we are, focusing on new ideas
I
at
just want to
this
address
point.
this here. I was going to ask why we don't have an engineer. You guys made the statement that we have an engineering company on per diem or something, is what you said? If you called in the engineer, you'd have to pay every time he came?
NECOG, if we go to NECOG, we have to
Well,
pay.
why can't we do that just to double check his homework? He's probably 100% right, but how do we know that?
I need permission to do that.
Ask for someone. You got 300 names there, that should be a little
Thank you,
support for you.
Thank you.
I guess I just got my question answered. There's no town engineer, so you're
Correct.
just, I understand he's qualified, his stamp is on it, it's his license and all that stuff, but there's there's nobody to review, no engineer to review his calculations. So my question is, if you go out there for a site visit, you know, maybe you guys don't even do site visits, I don't know, but if you guys, the project is on its way and it's going, it's 6 months in the project, who's gonna go out there and check to see, yeah, the groundwater is, just double check, I'm just curious. Anybody?
Our zoning enforcement officer does that.
Or what's her, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but what's her qualifications?
Certification for being a zoning enforcement officer. There's courses.
So not an engineer.
Again, I'm not being disrespectful,
I
I'm just
understand,
asking the
sir.
question.
Yeah, she goes through certification as a DEO. Are there any other, new or,
It is reassuring to me to realize that if you pondering the possibility of approving this, which would just not be rational, but you would have to go through the slow deliberative public process of changing your regulations before you could do that. That's out now. We've revealed that you would be compromising, that you would be breaching the current regulations and policy. So there would have to be a deliberative process, as you know, to alter any policy or regulations. So that's comforting to the public to know that that will have to happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I have one more question. Mike Olson, 442 Quanticktown Farm Road. Concerning the road, that S-turn by 363, have any of you gone and done measurements like this gentleman? Have you gone out there to take a look at the road? Have you ever ridden that portion of it? I assume everybody here has ridden that. I live there, and I can tell you, I've gone through that S-turns, basically daily. And I can tell you it's very tight, very tight. A truck once took off my mirror coming around that corner right near Nelson's. Also, to address Mr. Rice here, there was a truck that overturned, I'm not sure the address, I live at 442.
514.
At
It
their house.
overturned,
At their house.
514.
At the tree.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
welcome.
Oh, okay, I wasn't talking about the car, I was talking about,
The truck.
I was talking
It was
about a big
Boston's
truck
Yeah.
that went over. I believe it was a gravel truck, don't quote me on that. But there was a spill there. There was a diesel spill and they had to get people out there to clean it up. So,
Thank you.
I do have, again, there's some new information I received recently when I asked about the active gravel permits, for the town of Thompson. Do you know how many there are?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
I don't understand. There, again, shouldn't that be some important information for the commission to know that?
There are staff that advises the commission that
Okay,
knows that
I'm
information.
curious, you as members,
I don't,
because.
I'm sorry, no, I don't have that information off the top of my
Okay,
head.
that's fine, that's fair, I'm curious. There are, 6 active gravel permits now, to include new road. That's a lot of gravel mining. I understand there's probably one that's inactive that may come back online. There's another permit that was actually asking to be renewed. And now we're looking at another permit. I read into as a citizen's comment, I made you aware that there was a violation the sediment from an existing, mining project from Strategic Realty, that they had 2 different sets of plans. So their contractor on site was operating off of a plan that didn't even show silt protection, but the plan that you have stamped in this office shows it. 6, we're gonna put another one online with Aquatic, 6 Aquatic. It's beyond me how you can be, how the town of Thompson can be responsible to do the monitoring and the enforcement. These are massive projects. These are very massive projects in neighborhoods. And I would like all of you to help us out. Explain how is this gonna happen?
Sir.
Ben?
Frank Jurisic, 39 Logan's Lane. I don't think that this stuff is monitored. I have a gravel pit right down beside my house that's been open for some time. It is now landlocked, so they can't even come in and reconstitute it. So who's monitoring this stuff? You know, it's like a moonscape down there. It's still an open gravel pit. And it's landlocked, so the owner can't even get in there and do anything with it. And I've lived there now for a little over 3 years, built a home, so I've been there for a little over 4 years. And it's still open. It's still just a gravel pit. So who is overseeing this stuff? I don't believe it is, and that's why I don't believe anything anyone here is telling me that land is going to be reclaimed. And as far as bringing fill in, it's going to be mixed with calcium chloride. They're gonna use it to cut the dust. If calcium chloride gets in our water table, we are screwed. And don't tell me it isn't, because I know. Look it up. It's toxic. So, that is all I have to say.
The burden is for you to protect our water table, to follow your zoning regulations, to stay 8 feet above the groundwater table, do not allow some activity within that 8 feet, and call it a day.
Yes.
Sally White, 308 East Thompson Road. I think, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Langworth, in relation to Reardon, but I think that since there are a number of new people in here, the truth is that there were many rancorous meetings regarding the site on Reardon Road. There were angry, sad people with broken foundations, broken well casings, disturbed by the blasting, and it wasn't until a major television crew came in, and we had people actually from all over the state in here at some of the meetings that had other problems. And it took a long time to get it to the level where apparently the people local to that site found it tolerable or gave in. But it wasn't pretty, and there were a lot of rancorous meetings, so it wasn't a sweet, easy thing, believe me.
So Chairman, as a point of order, we didn't own that property at that time.
Correct, yeah, okay, thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you, anything else? Yes, sir?
Gary Ballboy, 221 Squattown Farm Road. I just want to bring up, there's several retirees in that area. I just can't imagine having to listen to the drone of heavy equipment every day for 2 years. I mean, that just seems intolerable to me. The other thing I want to bring up is there's a lot of motorcycles on that road, especially on weekends. Doesn't take much sand for motorcyclists to go down. Okay, that's another issue. But and the other thing I just wanted to kind of mention was, in the zoning laws, I'm looking at section 4. And there's, I think, a relevant section here that says, no permit shall be issued by the board unless it finds in each case that the proposed, number 1, will not aggravate a traffic hazard, fire hazard, or panic hazard. And number 4, I think, is relevant, will not tend to depreciate the value of property in the neighborhood or be otherwise detrimental to the neighborhood or its residents or alter the neighborhood's essential characteristics. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
One more comment.
Sorry, sir, can you just repeat your name?
It's a Gary Ballboy, 321 Squattown Farm.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Bohaboy.
Thank you.
I have one more comment.
Again, your name again.
Nadine L. Williams Edwards. Yeah, so obviously, it's the outcry that the commission sees from the community over this project, okay? How, we're governing the governance right now. Everybody is citing all of the regulations, so be mindful, we are not stupid people. We are going through and we're looking at every single regulation. So to Kathleen's point, if we're changing regulation for this special permit, which we believe is happening, whatever happens with that, the rest of the folks here, you've turned us into regulation reading experts, okay? That should speak very loudly to you, because why? Your community is uneasy. We don't trust you to do this for us anymore. That should say something to you. Every one of you should sit back and think, Why this one? Why this property? What's different about this property? And what's going on here with the community? Because we don't wanna be reading regulation. We wanna trust you to be doing this for us. We wanna elect people and we wanna pay people that are doing it so that we can go out and earn our living and have our property. So be mindful of what's going on here because everybody can start citing. We've read these. We've been working on this for hundreds of hours as a team and individually. And people can call them up on their phone. Everyone's got the regulations saved to their phones right now. Everybody here. So just know that. We're gonna follow this. Yes.
I'm going to read a letter into the record that I received, and then we will go to the applicant again. So this is dated June 11th, 2019. It's addressed to Joseph Brody Brown, Chairman, Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission, 815 Riverside Drive, PO Box 899, North Grosvenor, Connecticut. Pending application of Strategic Commercial Realty Incorporated, doing business as Rawson Materials, owner River Junction Estates LLC for property at 363 Quadic Town Farm Road, map 156, block 8, lot 7, zone RE 80 gravel mining operation to excavate sand and gravel. Our file number 24804-0005. Dear Chairman Brody Brown, this letter concerns the pending application of Strategic Commercial Realty Incorporated, doing business as Rawson Materials, for Rawson Materials captioned above. I'm writing to you at the request of Canterbury First Selectman Christopher Lipke concerning the above captioned application, which is now pending before your commission. Since I am Land Use Council of Canterbury and am very familiar with the town's dealings with Rawson Materials for almost the past decade, First Selectman Lipke asked me to write to your commission concerning our experiences with the Rawson organization. Normally, First Selectman Lipke wouldn't comment on a land use application pending in another town, but he was recently telephoned by an interested resident of Thompson and asked for his opinion about Canterbury's dealings with the Rawson organization. Our concern is that First Selectman Lipke's response to that inquiry be fully and faithfully reported to your commission. In the past, Canterbury has had issues with several of the local excavations, and those issues resulted in numerous appeals and enforcement actions. Starting in 2014, however, the town discovered that all of those pending appeals and legal actions could be resolved if we focused our communications with Jeffrey Rawson, president of Rawson Materials, and structured our agreements to place him in control of all the various operators. In both 2014 and 2015, the town, Rawson Materials, and the other parties to the pending litigation entered into stipulated judgments in the Superior Court. More recently, we have been in discussions with those same parties about updating and simplifying the 2015 stipulation. We have found the Rawson Materials Group under the leadership and direction of Jeffrey Rawson to be reasonable, responsible, and worthy of our trust. We've experienced not one single instance of a violation of any of the terms of our 2015 stipulation, and neighborhood complaints which were once common have now ceased. The various excavations control dust, their drivers are responsible, and all parameters of the excavations, such as setbacks, erosion control, restoration, etc., have been met. While we would never tell your commission how to vote on a pending application, First Selectman Lipke wants the commission to know that his comments to the interested neighbor who called were entirely positive. Rawson Materials has been active in providing athletic fields for the public and also for their nonprofit human service organization, Northeast Opportunities for Wellness Incorporated. Rawson Materials and its subsidiaries have been excellent members of the Canterbury business community, and we look forward to working with them in the future. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Very truly yours, Mark. Yes.
I do believe there was, I'm sorry, James Clark, 113 Library Road. I do believe on the previous meeting that I was at, I think it was 3 months ago, April 22nd, I read off court documentation that I guess they did in fact found that there was lowering of property values up to 25%.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Linda Olson, 442 Clark Town Farm Road. The safety of the drivers is way off. I drive this road every day trying to get to my grandchildren, and there's not one day that I have followed the truck that they have not driven down the middle of the road, and their wheels, not only half their truck is on the other side of the road, and coming back the other way, a number of times I've had to go into the ditch in order to get by safely, or not have my car. And I'd have to go bang, bang, bang down the side of the road, because this truck has got at least 2 wheels on the other side of the yellow line. So safety is not one of their issues.
Road's too narrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one last,
At
I have a video if you could.
I have one last comment,
Is
and then I'll be
this new
done.
information?
This isn't new information, this is just a request, basically. I have a request before anybody on this board makes a vote, that they open their books to page 45 and have the criteria of approval for special permits in front of them. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Held, any, thing you'd like to close with, respond to?
Sure, I'll respond to some of the comments that the public made. As far as compensation for roads and the damage to them from operations like this, we've stated several times, and I'll just reiterate again, Thompson is the only town that I'm aware of that actually requires, as part of their application fee, money from the applicant specifically for fixing roads that may be damaged in operations like this. Rawson Materials obviously does not control the amount of that fee, but we've provided the fee in accordance with what the regulations require. There's concerns about potential for spills on the site, whether it be lubricants or fuels or things like that. We have provided containment with paved fueling pad on here. As part of this operation, should it move forward, it is over 5 acres of disturbance. It is subject to a DEEP stormwater discharge permit. Part of that permit registration is the creation of a detailed stormwater pollution prevention plan. There's been concerns about an independent peer review from an engineer that's not associated with Rawson. That SWIP, to be valid, has to be peer reviewed by an independent engineer. And that certification has to be provided as part of the SWIP to DEEP before this project could move forward. So part of the SWIP is these plans that you see in front of you. There's much more detailed documentation that goes into that permit registration, all of which has to be peer reviewed by an independent professional engineer. So that actually will take place, not necessarily on behalf of the town, but on behalf of Connecticut DEP. There was a question about whether we did any water quality tests on water samples from the monitor wells we installed. The answer to that question is no. The purpose of those water monitoring wells is strictly to monitor the elevation of the groundwater on the site. It's my professional opinion that we're not going to have any impact on groundwater quality as a result of this project. There's obviously been numerous concerns voiced about traffic safety, speed of traffic on the road in this area. Obviously, the material that's coming into and going out of this site is going to be done in large trucks. Over the frontage of this property here, if they're leaving here, they're not going to be going very fast down this stretch of road. It's just a function of how trucks operate.
Come on, everyone, you watch.
Excuse me.
There was a concern about who monitors the health and safety of the area. This will be an MSHA regulated mining site. If there are concerns about health and safety, they can be brought to MSHA. I can assure you, if somebody makes a complaint to MSHA, they're going to go look at it. That's their job, and they take it very seriously. There's also deep regulations that apply with things such as fugitive dust. So if there's problems with dust, DEEP is well versed in handling those complaints, and they know what to look for and know how to handle them. So you do have options available to you if you feel that there is a violation or an infraction on the site. I'm not going to belabor the special permit criteria. I provided written evidence in the record, and I'm just going to let that stand on its own. Obviously, we are going to have to agree to disagree on that point. There was some statements that this is really an industrial or a commercial operation based on an SIC code. That's a standard industrial classification. It really has nothing to do with zoning. Again, that has something to do with stormwater permitting through Connecticut DEEP. It's a residential zone. The reason that it is a special permit and not a use by right is because it is unique in nature. There is the potential for impacts to the neighborhood, and part of the commission's and the regulations authority is to minimize those impacts. We feel that the plans effectively do that to the greatest extent that we can. Again, I mentioned the interpretation of the regulations as far as being in that 8-foot zone between the groundwater table and whether you can go below the groundwater table. Again, several months ago, this commission approved the excavation of a large pond, knowing full well they were approving excavation well below the water table. It's not the only time that they've approved something like that.
Order, silence please.
So again, I would just say that those two sections of the regulation are not in conflict with one another, and the plans as we've proposed them follow both of those sections of the regulations. There's been continual testimony about test pits that we show on our plan that do not have test pit data. I've explained this before, I'm going to explain it one more time so it's fresh in everybody's minds. There are test pits right here, here, and here. They are shown as a test pit, there is no data on the plans. I am not trying to refute that fact. What I will tell you is that as a licensed land surveyor, I would be remiss if I did not show the location of an obvious disturbance on this site and show it on the plan. It's shown as a test pit because there was evidence that a test pit was dug there. I did not observe it. Again, I would be negligent if I posted fictitious data simply so I could publish data for a test pit that's shown on the plan. So I hope that covers why they're shown there, but there is no data. There was some mention of the pastoral beauty of this site. I realize that this is a very old and historic house here. I don't know if any of you have ever had the opportunity to walk up close to it, to walk inside of it. It's in barely livable condition and it's basically fallen apart. The garage that's over here has a blue tarp for a roof. Obviously beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I would have a hard time calling that pastoral beauty. I think we addressed the issue of topsoil removal. There is no intention to remove topsoil or subsoil from the site and sell it. It will all be retained on site for final restoration. We've covered the silt backfill material. If there's any more concerns about that, I don't know what else I can say. It's clean mineral soil that's brought on site. It's an acceptable practice recognized by Connecticut DEP. In practical terms, it gives you a better final restored site than if you just spread the topsoil and subsoil on bare sand and gravel and try and grow vegetation on it. It just doesn't work very well. There was some concerns brought up about another site apparently where there was blasting that damaged things. Again, Rawson Materials did not own that site when that damage took place, and this application does not include any blasting. Specifically going on the record saying that there will be no blasting on the site as a result of this project. One thing that I would like to ask the commission, I have not seen that list of alleged shortcomings in our site plan. I don't know if maybe you could read those to me and I could respond to those. One that I do remember off the top of my head is that we failed to show the 100-foot upland review area. That actually is shown both around the wetland associated with the pond and the wetland associated with this intermittent water course over here. We're showing the 100-foot regulated area here as required by wetland regulations, but I'm curious to see what the other
Are all the telephone poles on the road, on the plan,
No,
on that map?
no, I stated that already. Because we have to measure, we have to figure all that out.
There are 5 that are missing.
So there's no telephone poles on the map? I'm not gonna
There's
speak 'cause
there's a
I
few of them.
don't want to call them.
There are only 2.
There's one. Yeah, you're right, there's two.
I was looking at this. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question while he's up there? Why did they choose to go down the worst road with the biggest trucks? Wouldn't it be so much easier to go down Spicer Road? That's almost a 30-foot wide road, I don't get. I mean, I understand you gotta go up and around, and not that I'm saying that anybody else should have to deal with that, but you're going around corners that are 8.6 feet wide with trucks that are bigger than when I went off of my data with, because they're mirror to mirror, they're almost 11 feet. There's no way you're gonna send I mean, you've done it, I've seen them go by my house at every 17 minutes when you were doing New Road, which we won't talk about. But the only reason why I think you wanna go that way is because, I'm not saying, Rossman's a great company, I heard everything about them. Nothing against any of them, but if you're going a back way, going on that kind of a road, you're hiding something. Why wouldn't you go right up that road and wide open road? Because Hohenink doesn't want you going by the golf course, Mr. Rice don't want you going by his house, because when you come down that hill with your Jake brake on, that's all this gentleman's gonna hear. He don't wanna listen to that. You wanna listen to? I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry, I'm speaking to you. Yeah. I'm just saying, it's the worst road to go down. Yeah. That's it, I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying spicy.
So here, we have from the document, item 1, legend, the name, address, and seal of the civil engineer, it says seal of civil engineer is not on the site plans.
Okay, you have site plans submitted, every revision that's been submitted has been signed and sealed by a licensed land surveyor and professional engineer.
Statement.
The legend, was there a question about the legend? There's a legend shown on the cover sheet, there's a legend shown on the property survey, but there's a legend shown on the excavation plan, there's a legend shown on the restoration plan.
Question on that.
Maybe we could reiterate just what the question was.
Page 7.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Application 1907, site plan under erosion and sediment control does not provide sufficient detail under the categories slow the flow, keep clean runoff separated, reduce on-site potential, and install perimeter controls.
I guess that's for you to interpret. We feel that it meets the regulations in the 2002 ENS guidelines.
Water table in the northern area of intended excavation. This area comprises 45% of the project excavation. Incomplete and does not establish the location of the water table.
Okay, I disagree. I think we have adequately established the groundwater elevation. Again, that's for the interpretation of the commission.
Again, since we did not have this, this plan until this evening, there was, again, total excavation area 5.4, sedimentation basin required. He's now designed something to that effect. I'm not sure again about these, the suitability or at this point, because there's not enough time to look at it, but there is now a change to address that issue. Next item, location map at the scale of 1 inch equals 2,000 feet shall be submitted. I believe yours is 1 to 1,000.
We actually submitted a separate location map with our application materials.
That doesn't answer the question.
We submitted what you're saying is a short copy.
I still don't understand.
If you look at the application materials that were submitted initially to the zoning enforcement officer, it included a location map at 1 inch equals 2,000 feet.
It doesn't show it on your plans now.
Correct. It's on a separate document.
Where is it?
It's in the application file.
Well, we didn't see it. Again, we didn't see it. I'm looking at this is all we see, and what we were giving by the commission, that's why this list was generated, because these items were not there.
And so, right, so what we're saying is that item is there.
Well,
So that's
so
one of your
can we
concerns,
see
that
it?
it doesn't.
Because why isn't it on there?
Request to see the file, it's part of the application file.
Well, we did. Okay. Zoning districts and dimensions of all yards as required by these regulations. Information will be shown in mapped and tabular forms.
Okay, there's nothing relevant to a yard setback. The relevant setback here is a 50-foot separation to a property line, which has been shown.
That's your interpretation.
Yep.
A site plan shall be the signed seal of those who prepared the site plan. I don't see a signature from the soil scientist.
Plans have been submitted with the application that bear the original signature of the soil scientist who delineated the wetlands.
I'm sorry, what was that, please? Could we see that, please? Could Cynthia show us that?
Show you what?
The signed seal of the, soil
You
scientist.
have a copy of the letter, you're talking about the letter.
No, we're talking about it, and
No.
it has to be on the.
Joseph
plan.
Thoreau signed the plans that were originally submitted with the application.
Could I see that? Because I know he signed, I believe there was the original, but I have not yet to see.
And just so you, there's no such thing as a seal for a soil scientist.
Yes, I